The sleek alien transport vessel cut through the darkness of space, its engines humming softly as it approached the human shipyard. Inside the cockpit, Inspector Kella sat rigid in her command chair, her 4 slender arms moving across the control panels with practiced efficiency. Her scaled skin shimmered under the dim blue lighting as she checked her scanning equipment for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "Those readings cannot be accurate," she muttered, her voice carrying a mixture of disbelief and growing concern. Beside her, Trix adjusted his own instruments. The young assistant had been working with Kella for only 2 years, but he had learned to trust her instincts. When she looked worried, there was usually good reason. His 6-fingered hands trembled slightly as he recalibrated the sensors. "Inspector, I have checked 4 times now. The power signatures from that vessel are 47 times above legal limits. This is unprecedented." Kella felt her twin hearts beating faster. In her 30 years as a weapons compliance inspector for the Galactic Council, she had seen many violations. Smugglers with hidden plasma cannons. Pirates with modified shield generators. Even a few rogue colonies with unauthorized missile systems. But nothing like this. Nothing even close to this. The shipyard grew larger in their viewport. It was a massive orbital structure floating in the empty space between star systems. Dozens of smaller human ships dotted the area, moving about their business. But none of them mattered. All of Kella's attention fixed on the vessel in the central dock. The human warship was enormous. It hung in space like a predator waiting to strike, all sharp angles and dark metal. Its hull was covered in weapon batteries that gleamed under the distant starlight. Energy readings pulsed from it in waves that made Kella's instruments scream warnings. "By the ancient laws," Trix whispered, his voice barely audible. "What have the humans built?" Their transport docked with a soft clang against the human ship's airlock. Kella stood, smoothing her official inspector's robes with her lower pair of arms while her upper arms gathered her scanning devices and documentation tablets. She had to remain professional. She had to follow protocol. Even if every instinct told her to turn around and flee. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. On the other side stood a human male in a crisp gray military uniform. He was tall by human standards, with short dark hair showing traces of silver at the temples. His face was weathered but calm, and his eyes held a confidence that made Kella instantly suspicious. "Inspector Kella," the human said, his voice warm and welcoming. He extended one hand in the human greeting gesture. "I am Captain Robert Hayes. Welcome aboard the UHNS Indomitable. We have been expecting you." Kella ignored the outstretched hand. Physical contact with subjects under investigation was improper. Instead, she held up her official credentials with one arm while another arm activated her recording device. "Captain Hayes, I am Inspector Kella of the Galactic Council Weapons Compliance Bureau. Preliminary scans of your vessel indicate violations of 17 separate treaties governing military vessel construction and operation. I am here to conduct a full inspection and document all violations for Council review." Robert's smile never wavered. He lowered his hand without any sign of offense. "Of course, Inspector. We have nothing to hide. Please follow me. I will give you complete access to all ship systems." He turned and began walking down the corridor. Kella and Trix followed, their instruments already scanning everything around them. The human ship's interior was surprisingly clean and well organized. Crew members moved past them with military precision, each one nodding respectfully to their captain as they passed. Their eyes were alert and focused. These were trained soldiers, not civilian traders. The corridors themselves hummed with power. Kella could feel it through her feet, a constant vibration that spoke of massive energy systems running throughout the ship. Her scanners confirmed what her senses told her. The power levels here were staggering. They passed a group of human technicians working on what appeared to be a weapons control panel. Kella stopped, her upper arms holding her scanner toward the system. The readings made her skin crawl. "This targeting system," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "It has processing speed beyond legal limits. Response time under 0.5 seconds. Maximum legal response time is 3.2 seconds. Robert nodded calmly. "Yes, that is correct. Our targeting AI can acquire and track up to 2,000 separate targets simultaneously and prioritize them by threat level in real time. That is illegal." "Yes," Robert agreed simply. "Would you like to continue the tour?" Kella stared at him, trying to understand his attitude. He showed no shame, no concern, no attempt to hide or minimize the violations. He simply acknowledged them and moved on. What kind of people were these humans? They continued walking. Every few meters, Kella found something new to add to her growing list of violations. Energy conduits that exceeded safe power transfer limits. Structural reinforcements that indicated the ship was built to withstand forces that would tear normal vessels apart. Life support systems designed to keep the crew alive through combat conditions that should be impossible. Finally, they reached a large viewport overlooking the main hull. Robert stopped here, turning to face Kella directly. "Before we continue," he said, his voice losing some of its warmth, "I want you to understand something, Inspector. This ship was not built carelessly. It was not built by criminals or pirates. Every system, every weapon, every violation you will document was designed and constructed by the finest engineers humanity has to offer." Kella's eyes narrowed. "That makes it worse, Captain Hayes. You knowingly violated Council law." "Yes," Robert said quietly. "We did. And before this inspection is over, you will understand why. You will understand what forced us to build a ship like this. Come. Let me show you our defensive systems first." He led them toward another section of the ship. Kella followed, her mind racing with questions. Her datapad was already filled with violations. She had enough evidence to have this ship impounded and its crew arrested. But something in Robert's voice, something in his absolute confidence, made her deeply uneasy. What could possibly justify building something like this? What threat could be so terrible that humans would risk war with the entire Galactic Council? As they walked deeper into the warship, Kella realized she was about to find out. And somehow she suspected the answer would terrify her far more than any illegal weapon ever could. Captain Robert led them through a series of secured doorways, each one requiring his handprint and voice confirmation. The deeper they went into the ship, the more the air itself seemed to hum with restrained power. Kella's instruments were going wild, their displays flashing warnings in colors she had never seen before. They entered a massive chamber that made Kella stop in her tracks. The room was filled with enormous crystalline structures that pulsed with blue-white light. Energy arced between them in beautiful, deadly patterns. The walls were lined with control panels where human technicians monitored flowing data streams. "This is our primary shield generator room," Robert said, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "The system uses quantum lattice technology to create a defensive field around the entire ship." Kella approached one of the crystals, her scanner extended. The readings made her feel sick. "This shield strength? Captain Hayes, this system could withstand bombardment from 50 heavy warships firing simultaneously." 52 actually, Robert corrected. "We tested it thoroughly." Trix looked up from his own scanner, his face pale with shock. "Legal limits restrict defensive shields to withstand attacks from 3 ships maximum. You are 17 times over the legal threshold." Robert simply nodded. "The math is correct. Shall we continue?" The next stop was the weapons bay. Kella had inspected military vessels before, but nothing prepared her for what she saw now. The chamber stretched for what seemed like kilometers, filled with row after row of massive cannons. Each one was pristine, maintained with obvious care, and aimed through reinforced firing ports in the hull. "These are our magnetic accelerator cannons," Robert explained, walking casually between the enormous weapons. "We call them railguns. They accelerate a tungsten slug to 97% of light speed." Kella's upper arms trembled as she recorded the information. "What is their effective range?" "Approximately 2 million kilometers with maintained accuracy." 2 million. Kella could barely speak. "The maximum permitted weapons range is 200,000 kilometers. You have built weapons with 10 times the legal range." Robert stopped beside one of the railguns, running his hand along its smooth barrel. "We had to solve several engineering problems. The main issue was heat dissipation. At these velocities, the barrel temperature would normally reach levels that would melt any known metal. We developed a superconducting cooling system that channels the heat into our power grid." "You are very proud of breaking the law," Kella said, her voice sharp with anger. Robert's expression became serious. "I am proud that human engineers solved problems others said were impossible. Whether that makes me a criminal or a savior depends on perspective. You will form your own judgment soon enough." He led them to another section where different weapons awaited. These were sleeker, with barrels that glowed with internal light. Plasma lances. They superheat matter into a directed beam capable of cutting through standard warship armor in approximately 4 seconds. Kella was frantically taking notes, her multiple arms moving in coordinated chaos. Every new weapon system added more violations to her list. Trix had stopped counting after 30 separate treaty breaches. His datapad simply read critical violations in flashing red text. But the worst was yet to come. Robert brought them to a heavily shielded door marked with warning symbols in 12 different languages. I need to warn you before we enter. What you are about to see is perhaps our most controversial system. He opened the door. The chamber beyond was enormous and circular, with walls covered in strange technology that bent light around it in impossible ways. But Kella barely noticed the walls. Her attention fixed on the center of the room. There, suspended in midair by forces she could not comprehend, floated a perfect sphere of absolute darkness. It was small, no larger than her fist, but looking at it made her eyes hurt. Space itself seemed to bend around it, warping and twisting in ways that violated every natural law. What is that? Kella whispered, her voice barely audible. A controlled microsingularity, Robert said calmly. What you might call a miniature black hole. It powers the entire ship indefinitely. Kella felt her legs go weak. She grabbed onto a railing for support. You have weaponized a black hole. This is madness. This technology is forbidden under the fundamental prohibitions. Entire planets can be sanctioned for even researching this. We have not weaponized it, Robert corrected. We use it for power generation. The distinction is important. Trix was backing toward the door, his eyes wide with terror. Inspector, we must leave. We must report this immediately. This ship should not exist. But Kella could not move. She stared at the singularity, watching reality bend around it. How long have you had this operational? 7 years. It has performed perfectly. 7 years. Kella tried to comprehend it. You have been operating an illegal singularity reactor for 7 years and the Council knew nothing. Robert's smile was grim. The Council knows very little about what humanity does in deep space. We prefer it that way. He led them away from the reactor chamber. Kella felt relieved to have that terrible sphere out of sight, though she knew she would see it in her nightmares. They walked in silence for several minutes before reaching another section of the ship. Our faster-than-light drive, Robert said, gesturing to a massive engine assembly that filled an entire deck. Standard galactic drives require 6 months to cross from one side of the galaxy to the other. This system can complete the same journey in 11 days. Kella did not even bother checking her instruments anymore. She knew what they would say. More violations. More impossible technology. More reasons to have this ship destroyed and its builders arrested. Where did you learn to build these things? She asked quietly. Humanity has only been part of the Galactic Council for 40 years. You should not possess this knowledge. Robert turned to face her fully. His expression was no longer friendly or calm. It was hard and determined. We learned it because we had to, Inspector. Necessity drives innovation. Fear drives progress. And we have been very afraid. Afraid of what? Robert was silent for a long moment. Finally he said, Come with me to my office. There are things you need to see. Things the Council has been hiding from inspectors like you. Things that will make you understand why we built a ship that should not exist. Kella followed him, her mind spinning with questions. Behind her, Trix whispered nervously, This is beyond our authority, Inspector. We should report and request Council intervention. But Kella shook her head. She had come this far. She needed to know the truth. She needed to understand what could drive an entire species to build something so powerful, so dangerous, so completely illegal. Whatever that truth was, she suspected it would change everything she thought she knew about the galaxy. Robert's office was surprisingly simple. A desk, a few chairs, and a large holographic display unit mounted on the wall. He gestured for Kella and Trix to sit, then sealed the door behind them. The lock engaged with a solid click that made Kella's skin prickle with unease. What I am about to show you is classified at the highest level of human government, Robert said quietly. He dimmed the lights and activated the holographic display. The Galactic Council has been suppressing this information for 3 years. The hologram flickered to life, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Kella recognized the familiar spiral arms, the core worlds, the outer colonies. But something was wrong. Large sections of the galactic rim were marked in deep red, like a spreading disease. This, Robert said, his finger pointing to the red zones, is what we call the Scourge. Others call them the Devourers. We do not know what they are. We do not know where they came from. What we do know is that they consume everything in their path. He manipulated the display, zooming in on one of the red zones. Images appeared, showing empty planets, silent cities, orbital stations drifting dead in space. No bodies. No debris. Just emptiness. The Scourge leaves nothing behind, Robert continued. No survivors, no structures, no trace that civilization ever existed. They consume it all. Metal, organic matter, energy, everything. Kella leaned forward, studying the images with growing horror. I have heard no reports of this. No council alerts, no emergency sessions. Of course not. The council buried the reports. Robert pulled up a document file. 3 advanced civilizations have vanished in the past 18 months. The Kelvin Imperium controlled 200 worlds. Gone. Every planet empty. Every station silent. The Theshan Collective, one of the oldest spacefaring cultures in the galaxy, vanished completely. The Margoth sovereignty sent out one final distress call. It cut off mid-transmission. When survey ships arrived 2 weeks later, there was nothing left. Trix stared at the data, his hands trembling. This cannot be real. Something this catastrophic. The Council would have mobilized the entire defense fleet. Would they? Robert asked. Or would they hide the truth to prevent galaxy-wide panic? To protect trade routes and economic stability? To avoid admitting they cannot defend their own people? He brought up more files. Combat footage, grainy and broken, showing massive shapes moving through space. They were part biological, part mechanical, covered in writhing tendrils and pulsing with sickly light. Ships fired on them, standard Galactic Defense Force vessels with their regulation weapons. The energy beams bounced harmlessly off Chitinous armor. Missiles exploded without effect. One by one the defending ships were torn apart. We have analyzed 73 separate engagements between Scourge forces and Galactic ships, Robert said quietly. The survival rate is exactly 0. Not a single ship has returned from direct combat. Standard Council military vessels are completely ineffective. Kella felt cold despite the comfortable temperature of the room. How long before they reach Council space? Robert pulled up a predictive map. Red zones spread like infection across the hologram, moving steadily toward the core worlds. Our most optimistic models give us 18 months. More likely 12. The Scourge is accelerating. He pointed to specific systems on the map. Inspector Kella, your homeworld of Val the Prime will be in their direct path in approximately 16 months. Trix's people on Thessar Minor have 18 months at most. My homeworld Earth has perhaps 2 years if we are very lucky. The weight of his words settled over the room like a suffocating blanket. Kella stared at the map, watching the red zones advance in the simulation. Her world. Her family. Everything she knew, consumed by those nightmare creatures. 5 years ago, Robert said, humanity detected the first signs of the Scourge. Strange signals from the rim. Ships going silent. We investigated. We studied. We analyzed. And we became terrified. He pulled up another document, this one marked with official Galactic Council seals. We submitted a formal request to the Council for military expansion rights. We explained that we had detected an existential threat. We provided our data. We asked permission to build defensive fleets beyond treaty limitations. And the Council's response? Kella asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Denied. Unanimously. Robert's voice was hard now, bitter. We were told we were being paranoid. That we were fabricating threats to justify building weapons. The representative from Val the Prime specifically called us warlike primitives seeing ghosts in the dark. Kella flinched. That sounded exactly like something her government would say. Humanity was still new to galactic politics. Still viewed with suspicion by older, more established species. So we made a decision, Robert continued. If the Council would not let us build ships legally, we would build them in secret. We gathered our best engineers, our brightest minds. We spent 15 years developing technology that the Council said was impossible. We built the Indomitable and 11 sister ships just like her. He met Kella's eyes directly. We broke your laws, Inspector. Every single treaty, every regulation, every limitation. We broke them all knowingly and deliberately. Because when the Scourge comes, it will not stop to check whether our defensive systems are treaty compliant. It will not care about our politics or our regulations. It will simply consume everything and everyone in its path. Trix was shaking now, his voice barely a whisper. Why did no one tell us? Why keep this secret? Because the Council is afraid, Robert said. Afraid of economic collapse. Afraid of mass panic. Afraid of admitting they have no answer to this threat. So they hide the truth and hope the problem goes away. But it will not go away. The Scourge is coming, and nothing the Council currently possesses can stop it. Before Kella could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red emergency lights flashed in the corridors outside. Robert was on his feet instantly, opening a communication channel. A calm female voice filled the room. Captain Hayes, priority distress call from Colony World Sethera 7. Scourge contact confirmed. Multiple bioships detected. Colonial Defense Forces are engaging but suffering heavy casualties. Estimated time until planetary shield collapse is 6 hours. Nearest Galactic Defense Fleet is 3 days away. Robert's face went pale. Sethera's population? 4.3 million, Captain. Primarily civilian colonists. Families. Kella stood frozen, her mind racing. 6 hours. 4 million people. 3 days until help arrived. The math was simple and terrible. Robert turned to her, and she saw something in his eyes she had not seen before. Desperation. Inspector Kella, I need an answer right now. The Indomitable can reach Sethera in 40 minutes. But if I deploy without council approval, that is an act of piracy. That is technically an act of war. So I am asking you, as a representative of the Galactic Council, do I save those people or do I follow the law? Kella looked at the holographic map still glowing on the wall. She saw the red zone spreading. She thought of 4 million people, families huddled in shelters, watching the sky and praying for rescue that would arrive too late. She thought of her career, 30 years of service to the Council. She thought of the law she had sworn to uphold. She thought of treaties and regulations and proper procedure. Then she thought of her own family back on Valda Prime. She thought of them facing the scourge in 16 months with no one to protect them. Deploy the ship, she said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. I will observe and record everything for my report. The Council will have to decide what to do with that information. Robert smiled grimly. Thank you, Inspector. He pressed a button on his desk. All hands, battle stations. Helm, plot emergency jump to Sethera 7. All weapons systems to full readiness. We are going to war. The Indomitable shuddered as its massive engines powered up to full capacity. Kella gripped the railing on the bridge as the ship accelerated, feeling forces that should have crushed her being somehow neutralized by the internal gravity systems. Through the main viewport, space twisted and bent as the ship prepared to jump. Entering faster-than-light drive in 10 seconds, announced a human officer named Linda at the navigation console. She had short blonde hair and moved with the same military precision as everyone else on the bridge. Robert stood in the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. All stations report readiness. One by one, officers called out confirmations. Weapons ready. Shields ready. Power systems optimal. The ship hummed with deadly purpose. Space folded around them and suddenly they were moving impossibly fast. Stars stretched into lines of light. Kella had traveled faster than light thousands of times before, but never like this. The Indomitable crossed distances in minutes that should take hours. Approaching Sethera 7, Linda said. Dropping to normal space in 30 seconds. Robert's voice was calm and controlled. Arya, give me tactical display on main screen the moment we arrive. Confirmed, Captain, the ship's artificial intelligence responded. The stars snapped back into focus as they emerged from the jump. What Kella saw on the view screen made her blood run cold. The Scourge bioship was massive beyond comprehension. It looked like some terrible fusion of living tissue and dark metal, covered in pulsing veins of bioluminescent fluid. Tendrils hundreds of meters long whipped through space around it. The thing was easily the size of a small moon. Around it swarmed thousands of smaller attack drones, each one the size of a fighter craft but moving with organic fluidity. They darted and spun like a school of predatory fish. Below, the planet Sethera 7 hung in space, its orbital defenses burning. 3 defense platforms had already been torn apart, their debris forming glittering clouds. The planetary shields flickered weakly, sections failing and reforming under constant bombardment. Tactical assessment, Robert ordered. Linda worked her controls rapidly. Scourge bioship confirmed. Length approximately 73,000 meters. Mass equivalent to a standard battle carrier. Attack drone count is 4,000 and rising. They appear to be launching more from internal bays. Sethera's remaining defenses estimate 20 minutes until complete shield failure. Time to weapons range? 8 minutes at current approach speed. Robert turned to a dark-haired man at the weapons station. Thomas, I want firing solutions on that bioship. Concentrate railgun fire on the main body mass. Plasma lances to clear the drone swarms. Have quantum disruptors ready on my command. Aye, Captain. Solutions locked and ready. Kella watched in fascination as the human crew worked with perfect coordination. No panic. No hesitation. They had trained for this exact scenario. Open channel to Sethera Defense Command, Robert ordered. A face appeared on the secondary screen, a Thyrene male with scaled features twisted in terror. Unknown vessel, this is Defense Coordinator Ven. Please identify yourself. Coordinator Ven, this is Captain Robert Hayes of the UHNS Indomitable. We are here to help. Get your civilians into deep shelters and maintain your shields as long as possible. We are engaging the enemy now. The human ship? Ven's expression shifted from terror to desperate hope. But the report said you were illegal. Treaty violations. The Council issued a warrant. We are illegal, Robert confirmed. We are also your only chance of survival. Hayes out. The Indomitable surged forward, its massive engines pushing it to combat speed. Around the ship, space began to shimmer as the quantum lattice shields activated. Entering weapons range in 30 seconds, Linda called out. Scourge bioship is launching additional attack drones. New count 7,000 and climbing. Let them come, Robert said quietly. Thomas, fire when ready. Aye, sir. Firing railguns now. The ship shuddered as the magnetic accelerators released. Tungsten slugs accelerated to near light speed, invisible to the naked eye. They crossed the distance in seconds and slammed into the bioship's hull with devastating force. Massive chunks of organic armor exploded outward. The bioship writhed like a wounded animal, its tendrils thrashing in pain. Direct hits across the forward section. Thomas reported, his voice excited. Target's outer hull compromised. Structural damage confirmed. But the bioship was already responding. Its tendrils whipped forward, launching globules of bioplasma that burned like miniature stars. The projectiles scorched across space directly toward the Indomitable. Incoming fire. Brace for impact. Linda warned. The bioplasma struck the Indomitable's shields. The bridge lights flickered. Energy crackled across the viewport. But the shields held firm. Shield strength at 93%, Arya reported calmly. No damage to primary systems. Shields recharging. Kella stared in amazement. An attack that would have vaporized 3 standard cruisers had barely scratched the Indomitable's defenses. Drone swarm closing fast. Range 200,000 kilometers and closing. Thomas, plasma lances. Full spread. Burn them out of space. With pleasure, sir. The Indomitable's lance batteries opened fire. Brilliant beams of superheated plasma cut through the void like swords of light. Each beam incinerated dozens of drones instantly. The swarm was torn apart, thousands of Scourge attack craft reduced to vapor and debris. Drone count dropping rapidly. 6,000, 4,000, 2,000. But the bioship continued producing more. They poured from openings in its hull like insects from a disturbed nest. Captain, bioship is charging a main weapon. Energy readings are off the scale. Comparable to a stellar flare. Robert's expression hardened. Quantum disruptors. Fire. From arrays along the Indomitable's forward hull, reality itself seemed to tear. The disruptor beams were barely visible, marked only by the way space twisted and warped around them. When they struck the bioship, the effect was catastrophic. A massive section of the creature simply ceased to exist. Matter broke down at the subatomic level, leaving nothing behind. The bioship's energy spike faltered and died. It reeled backward, wounded truly for the first time. Target's main weapon offline. Thomas shouted. Structural integrity failing across 40% of its mass. All weapons concentrate fire. And this. The Indomitable became a storm of destruction. Railguns fired continuously. Plasma lances swept back and forth. Missile batteries launched salvo after salvo. The bioship tried to retreat, its remaining drones forming a protective screen. It did not matter. Human weapons cut through everything. The bioship's armor cracked and shattered. Its tendrils were severed. Its internal structures collapsed. 8 minutes after the engagement began, the massive Scourge bioship broke apart. Its pieces tumbled through space, biological components dying in the cold vacuum. The remaining drones scattered and fled. Target destroyed, Linda confirmed. All Scourge forces retreating. Cethera 7 is secure. The bridge erupted in cheers. Crew members embraced each other. Someone laughed with relief. Robert allowed himself a small smile. Below them, on the planet's surface, 4 million people had just been saved from extinction. Kella stood trembling, her datapad hanging forgotten in her hands. She had just watched one human ship accomplish what entire fleets could not. She had seen weapons that should not exist destroy an enemy that seemed invincible. Inspector, Robert said quietly, turning to face her. Now do you understand why we built this ship? Kella could only nod, unable to speak. Everything she thought she knew about military doctrine, about proper weapons limitations, about the careful balance of galactic power had just been proven obsolete. Sometimes she realized the rules had to be broken. Sometimes survival required doing the impossible. Sometimes you needed humans. 3 weeks had passed since the battle at Sethera 7. Now Kella stood in the Grand Assembly Chamber on Unity Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Council. The room was enormous, with tiered seating rising in circles around a central platform. Representatives from 200 different species filled the seats, all waiting to hear her report. The chamber buzzed with conversation. Some voices were angry, demanding action against the humans. Others spoke in hushed, worried tones. Everyone had heard rumors about what happened at Sethera. Now they would hear the official account. The head counselor, an ancient Thyrene named Malvin, struck his ceremonial gavel against the podium. The sound echoed through the chamber and the crowd fell silent. His scales were pale with age, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. Inspector Kella, Malvin's voice carried across the vast room. You have completed your investigation of the human vessel called Indomitable. Present your findings to this council. Kella walked to the center platform, feeling the weight of 200 species watching her. Her career balanced on what she would say next. 30 years of service, a spotless record, all of it could end in the next few minutes. She activated her data display. Holographic images appeared above her head, showing the Indomitable in all its illegal glory. Honored counselors, she began, her voice steady. The UHNS Indomitable violates 23 major treaties and 47 minor regulations. Its weapons systems exceed legal limits by factors ranging from 30 to 100. Its defensive shields are illegal. Its power generation uses forbidden singularity technology. Its artificial intelligence violates consciousness development protocols. By every measure of council law, this ship should be immediately impounded and its entire crew arrested. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Several counselors nodded with satisfaction. This was what they wanted to hear. However, Kella continued, and the murmuring stopped. 3 weeks ago, that illegal ship saved 4.3 million lives on Sethera 7. It engaged and destroyed a Scourge bioship that would have consumed an entire world. It accomplished this in 8 minutes. The nearest legal galactic defense fleet would have arrived 3 days later. They would have found nothing but an empty planet. She changed the holographic display, showing combat footage from the battle. Counselors gasped as they watched the Indomitable's weapons tear through Scourge forces that had destroyed so many other ships. For 3 years, Kella said, her voice growing stronger, this council has suppressed information about the Scourge threat. We have ignored humanity's warnings. We denied their requests for military expansion rights. We called them paranoid and warmongering. And while we debated regulations and worried about maintaining power balances, 3 entire civilizations died screaming into the void. The chamber erupted. Counselors shouted at each other, some in outrage, others in fear. Accusations flew back and forth. Malvin struck his gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order. Inspector Kella, you overstep your authority. Malvin's voice cut through the chaos. You are here to report on treaty violations, not to question council policy. Then explain to the families on Sethera why their children are still alive. Kella shot back. Explain to them why you would rather follow regulations than save lives. Before Malvin could respond, the massive chamber doors opened. Captain Robert Hayes walked in, flanked by 2 human officers. He wore his formal dress uniform, dark blue with silver insignia. His boots clicked against the polished floor as he strode toward the center platform. Captain Hayes, Malvin said coldly, you were not summoned to this assembly. No, Robert agreed, stopping beside Kella. I summoned myself. Humanity has something to say to this council. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of worlds. You want to arrest me? Destroy my ship? Go ahead and try. But know this first. The Indomitable is not alone. We have 12 ships of her class already operational. 20 more are currently under construction. In 18 months we will have 50. In 3 years, 200. A counselor from the Merchant Guild stood up, his voice shaking with rage. You admit to flagrant violations of every military limitation treaty? This is an act of aggression against the entire council. Yes, Robert said simply. We broke your laws. We built weapons you forbade. We did it knowingly and deliberately, and we would do it again tomorrow. Because your laws are about to get millions more people killed. He activated his own holographic display, overlaying it with Kella's. The image showed the Scourge's projected expansion, red zones spreading like disease across the galaxy. The Scourge is accelerating. Our latest analysis shows them reaching core Council worlds in 14 months, not the 20 months we previously estimated. Counselor Malvin, your homeworld will be directly in their path in 16 months. Many of your worlds will fall before that. The chamber fell deathly silent. Every counselor stared at the advancing red zones, calculating when the threat would reach their own people. Humanity offers you a choice, Robert continued. You can arrest us, destroy our fleet, and face the Scourge with ships designed for peacetime patrol duties. Ships that will die in minutes against an enemy that knows no mercy. Or you can adapt. Create new military classifications for existential threats. Grant emergency provisions for unprecedented dangers. Let us help you fight. And if we refuse? Malvin asked quietly. Robert's expression turned cold. Then humanity will defend our own worlds and any others who ask for our protection. But the council that prevented us from saving the galaxy? That council can burn with all the others. A long silence followed. Then Kella stepped forward again. I propose a compromise. Create a special circumstances fleet, exempt from standard military limitations when facing existential threats. Place humanity in charge of developing anti-Scourge weapons and tactics. Train our forces together. Make what was illegal into what is necessary. You ask us to give humans unlimited military power, Malvin said. To trust a species we barely know with the defense of the entire galaxy. No, Kella replied. I ask you to let the species brave enough to break the rules for survival teach the rest of us how to fight. I ask you to choose living over being legally correct. The vote took 3 hours of heated debate. Counselors argued about precedent, about trust, about the risk of giving humans too much power. But in the end, the mathematics of survival won. The proposal passed by a narrow margin of 12 votes. Humanity was granted its exemptions. The Indomitable and her sister ships were retroactively authorized. Construction of the new Special Circumstances Fleet began immediately, with human engineers training officers from a dozen different species. 6 months later, Kella stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as a permanent council liaison officer. The ship now led a task force of 30 vessels, human and alien crews working together for the first time. Approaching Scourge-controlled sector, Arya announced. Multiple bioship signatures detected. Count as 5 capital-class vessels. Robert looked around his bridge. Humans worked beside Thyrene, Valthene, and species from across the galaxy. All of them trained, all of them ready. All ships, combat formation, he ordered. Let us show the Scourge what this galaxy can do when we stop arguing and start fighting together. The fleet surged forward into the darkness. Behind them, more ships were being built every day. The galaxy had finally learned what humanity had known all along. Sometimes survival required building something too powerful to be legal. Sometimes it required breaking every rule. Sometimes it required humans willing to do what others would not dare. The war against the Scourge had truly begun. And this time the galaxy was ready.